Hello, everyone. Welcome to my podcast, The Law Life. Today, we will talk about startups and their impact on the Indian economy. For this, we have Karthik Jaykumar here with us. He is partner at Peritum Partners and has an in-depth knowledge and insight about the startups. In this podcast, we have discussed about the legal and regulatory framework that goes around the startups, what the startup needs in this era, what will be the challenges of the startup in the upcoming future, and what is the AI impact on the Indian economy. So, coming to the topic, like what is the definition of a startup and how it is impacting the Indian economy?
Sure, of course. You do have a formal definition of what a startup is, which is given by the DPIIT. It's broadly on the basis of criteria basis, the age of a company or the type of an entity, also on the annual turnovers, and in terms of how the processes of what they are undertaking is broadly innovative or not. Of course, these are thresholds which have changed over a period of time. You could obviously find the specifics of it on the Startup India website in itself. But if you really think about things in just going backward in time a bit, let's rewind to say 2013, 2014, when things were a little different in India, where there was still a lot of focus towards the end of the globalization and how the 70s, 80s, 90s broadly was focusing on helping India's exposure to the global network. What you've really seen a lot of people doing is trying to import and use very prominent brands from outside of the country. But that trend is something which really changed ever since after the Modi government came into place, where one of the first things they started saying was "Make in India," and
Yes.
they started to really promote the whole the startup scene that India has had. And you've seen a lot of state governments proactively as well, kind of trying to add to what the center has undertaken as an initiative. Um, you can actually see a lot of people where, especially in what you call right now the falling markets, a lot of people call that the funding winter. A lot of people have called it so many different things in different circles. But I can tell you for a fact that I've seen two, three positive things that have happened, especially post the pandemic. During that first lockdown, a lot of businesses were born. You saw so
Hmm.
many people really rethinking where their life stands, thinking about, I'm spending 16, 18 hours working um, a corporate job, and I'm sure I might be making good money, but then is this what I want to do? And you saw so many new businesses kind of starting at that point. And that whole startup wave is what led to 2021, where you saw pretty much a lot of ease of access to capital. Pretty much every single news page that you're looking at, every single website that you're looking at started capturing bits saying that startup X raised so much funds from so and so VC fund. So somebody got acquired. You started seeing a lot of that. And cut to 2022 and 23, where um, in reality, what has honestly happened is some markets have gotten really crowded because a lot of
Hmm.
people, while starting up, have not really focused so much on innovation. You've seen some people creating repetitive things, which has led to a lot of consolidation, in the sense that the bigger players start to acquire the smaller ones, or the smaller ones just kind of fall off the market altogether. And on the other side, you also have the big boys of the market who've just been growing bigger and bigger. So if you really look in terms of how startups have contributed to the economy, I would honestly say that that has been tremendous. It has been an incredibly large number of new companies that have been created. Um, this helps in a lot of ways if you think of it, and it's a little bit of a circle of events, right? Because when you have multiple people creating new businesses, it's new job opportunities that are being created. And potentially, if a lot of these businesses end up taking off, you could potentially also end up seeing that it impacts the company's employment rates. And this
Hmm.
is something which is very, very positive. um, I'd also like to touch on one point which is perhaps a little underspoken about.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, one of the trends that I've seen happening is people tend to look at um, a very small sample space of some entrepreneurs who've maybe dropped out of education, right, out of college or perhaps even school, and created an incredible business. Oftentimes, people place reliance on a few things that they read on the internet, or just a few sets of facts about these people. And sure, I'm super glad for each of them that it worked out for them. But the only trend that I'm seeing happening now is the folks that are taking that same path using these
Hmm.
stories as inspirations, uh, it can be a very harsh journey for these people. So while perhaps a large sentiment is that it's positively impacting the economy, there is of course also the harsh side to this, where businesses do also tend to fail, and the ones
Yes.
that end up falling, these people have it very harsh. So yeah.
Yes.
Hmm.
So, sir, I like what my view is that in pandemic, this was a wake up call for many people. Pandemic was a wake up call for many people, and it like sort of there was a trend of moonlighting in the industry going on, that people are doing two jobs to sustain their livelihood. So that's also so. Sir, the can you like put on some light on the moonlighting effect
Yeah,
that happened and is happening right now also? So
of course. See, that's it's both a good and a bad thing if you think about it. Um, Being someone who's been on the side of being an employee and as well as an employer, on the side of an employee, it's very simple, right? It's I'm trying to use the cushion of my current employment to perhaps set up something and get out of the employment only at the point when I know that it's remunerative enough. Um, that's one perspective of it, but it also shows that I don't have conviction enough to be able to do something wholeheartedly, right?
hmm,
As the saying goes, without a risk, there really isn't a reward. Generally, you see people who've had some incredibly beautiful businesses that they've created. This has happened because they've given their 24/7 to that business, and people often quite underestimate what amount of effort goes into building a business. It can take up a lot of your mental space, a lot of your time and bandwidth, a lot of effort for several years. To be able to build that business into something profitable. But if you look at it more from an employer's perspective, now that starts to become a little problematic, because if you think about it, if you're an employer and I'm working for you, I'm spending 8-10 hours in your organization actively working on whatever my role is. And over a period of time, the more I see that my startup idea outside is becoming more and more viable, the natural tendency of human is to gravitate more towards the place of opportunity. And I'm
hmm,
going to spend a lot more time on that business. And maybe my efficiency, my energy levels, my how good I am with the work that I'm doing for you might go down, and that is potentially a great challenge. And we've also seen, over the past few years, we've had few situations that we've dealt with. We've helped some of our clients deal with some of these situations where someone's creating something which competes with the business they're already employed with, and they are moonlighting and creating it. Right now, by virtue of being someone employed in your organization, I might be privy to some information that is very sensitive to your business, and my efficiency and how much I'm contributing is already starting to fall, and I'm also trying to create something that can potentially hamper your business. So as an employer, then all of a sudden you're not going to be very happy about the moonlighting side of things. That being said, there are some businesses that we've come across where the employers actively encourage moonlighting,
yes.
saying, we're so happy to see that you have the entrepreneurial zeal. Why don't we help you create something? And often that I've even seen that sometimes leading to an investment coming from the parent entity into that
Hmm.
fresh young entity that's created, and a lot of support. So that's the whole spectrum of what I've seen. I wouldn't necessarily say it's only negative. Yeah.
Yeah, so like Swiggy was the company that was
Hmm.
supporting and is supporting the employees for like doing another things outside the employment.
Hmm.
So sir, like I'm curious to know about the Shark Tank India. Like I have seen their episodes and they fund the startups
Yeah.
mostly.
Hmm.
So like why after like why did it take so long to have this Shark Tank India to come in? Like
See, in all honesty, I've been a huge fan of shows like Shark Tank. I've in fact been someone who's avidly watched Shark Tank US, Shark Tank Australia. I've watched another show called Dragon's Den, which are all the same format, all outside of the country. And in reality, if you think about it, the concept of startup has already always existed. We just didn't
hmm,
have a formal definition to what it is. Anyone at any point could have started a business, but if you think about it now, what really the whole education around this has happened so much only post the Modi government coming into place.
yes.
You can see the amount of effort that they've really put around the whole startup India scene. Here in
Hmm,
Tamil Nadu, we have Startup TN. You've got I've seen so many other states that have got different bodies that are doing so much for education in general around startups and sensitizing the benefits you can get in actually trying to set a business up. Um, so I can see that they're doing so much towards the ease of doing business. This is really why you can see there is the base of startups that are available to access capital that was not there much earlier in India. It used to be your traditional family run businesses. If you think about the large corporate houses there are today, some of them are multiple generations deep. Right, this is probably the fifth, sixth
Yes.
generation running these businesses, and they've done
Hmm.
it incredibly well for several years. And sometimes it's the same families that are slowly expanding into related sectors. But until we had the ease of doing business, and not just the words of ease of doing business, you saw regulations changing, you saw
Hmm.
tax incentives, subsidies, and whatnot. Um, Relaxation on government fees, the ease of winding up if all hell breaks loose. All of this is technically something which enabled the startup base. And 2021 again was a fantastic year where we had several millions of dollars being poured into India from outside and even within in terms of investing into an asset class as startups. And slowly but surely, what started happening was even the common man, the middle class, the lower middle
Hmm.
class, everyone started understanding, hey, if I can invest very early stage and that business takes off, I could potentially start building wealth for myself. That's a positive thing. But the negative side is people didn't understand the importance of understanding and studying the fundamentals of a business before investing. There was a lot of blind investing into the asset class, and a lot
Hmm.
of businesses where they have failed. People who chose to put in maybe a huge part of their life savings had that entirely wiped, right? But this is perhaps my reading of why Shark Tank India happened much later, because that whole base of the startup scene in India happened a lot later after the sensitization by the government. And it
Yes.
made a lot of sense because now so many people were starting to invest into startups. And I would honestly say, um, if you've seen the whole format of the show, it's beautiful because they take the time every now and then to break down some of the tricky concepts into layman's
Hmm.
terms. And I kid you not, I mean, a few people in the social circles that I've met in the recent past, their parents are talking to me about, they're talking to me about some basics like customer acquisition cost and things like that, which maybe 5, 6 years back I could not have imagined that would be terminology that a household might understand,
Hmm.
right? So this is it's all, I think, something that has flown from education uh, into becoming the need of the hour, for the lack of a better way to put it.
Yeah, so like after 2019 or after 2021, there was a huge investment in the markets by the middle class family and so. And like before this, like before 2019 18, the startup concept was very alien to the middle class families because they just want their kids to get a decent job and settled in life. They don't want hassle and hustle in their lives.
Very true.
So yes, so that has the impact. Like I think if the government is aligned with the interest of the people, it makes a huge impact.
Yeah,
Yeah, so sir, it brings me to the next question, like what is the overview of the startups and the legal and regulatory framework that we have for startups?
sure. So when you really look at it, the beautiful thing in India is it's been a very balanced set of benefits that are being given to businesses. You can see that they've tried to be as sector agnostic as possible. When I say sector agnostic, it is that it's not that you have specific benefits that are given only to a particular kind of manufacturing. Now, if you look at the concept of startups in itself, literally, if you look at the Startup India website, you'll see a truckload of benefits that are suddenly available to any entity that registers as a startup. Now, think of it as self certification for labor compliances, think of it as reduced government fees. Think of it as ease to get IP protected. You have incredible access that is given through incubators and accelerators that are also backed by state governments. Now, this is something which, from a regulatory framework, you can really see there's been immense loads of support that have been given. Now, starting from DPIIT all the way to your finance acts of each of the years, this has been incremental from maybe 2018, 2019, where there's been incredible loads of support that have been given to startups and a lot of relaxations. It's very assuring when you see the Indian legislators are trying to keep up with the Indian market, which is maybe almost ahead of the global market at this point. In reality, whenever I tend to read some of these articles where they're saying that India is going to become someday $1 trillion market, and of course, if you really think about it, the pace with which the Indian economy and the market has grown, it's absolutely fabulous. If you think of
Hmm.
the brains behind a lot of inventions, even from the 70s, 80s, 90s, even to the early 2000s, the folks that moved out of India went over to places in the West, and perhaps even to the east of India to work at different places. That brain drain is starting to reduce greatly.
Yes.
And we're seeing, unfortunately, perhaps the only thing that I really look forward to, which I hope the Indian um, economy and the market is able to support better, is when you look at businesses that are perhaps predominantly tech based or SaaS based, you see a lot of them trying to house themselves in Delaware, in the US, or in Singapore. I hope to see India becoming that someday in the future.
Hmm.
Maybe a place like Bangalore, being the Silicon Valley of India, can potentially become the Delaware of tomorrow. I hope to see something of that nature. But I think the regulations are definitely working towards that. A simple example that I'd like to give you is you're seeing a lot of tax benefits, a lot of relaxations that are being given to startups. You also see that back in 2013, the US markets were so far ahead then, where startup funding had picked up so far back then. You can think of it as 10 years back from today. And
Hmm.
they had Y Combinator who came up with the concept of safe note investing back then. But India had only woken up to that much later because we didn't have the regulatory backing. And here we've got
Yes.
people like 100x VC and so many other people that are looking at adopting that safe note approach to make ease of investing in India. And that, thankfully, over the past couple of years, the regulators have been trying to regulate to make that investor friendly. Often people think that it's just another bit of compliance that's required, but there is a
Hmm.
reason for all of this compliance, right? Because think of the stock market. You have a regulator, right? In the US, you have SEC. You've got SEBI, who've put in so many regulations to ensure that you and I, as investors, are safe. But the Companies Act or FEMA or the Income Tax Act alone, if it didn't undergo the amount of change that it has slowly been undergoing, I would say we're maybe 60, 70% where we need to be, having all of the
Hmm.
regulations in place. But people often keep saying that we are under regulated or we're not yet there. But we need to take a moment, take a step back, appreciate the amount of progress that we have made from that 2013 Act and its rules.
Hmm.
There's been so much progress that's happened in the last decade, which has enabled business. And sure, there are a lot of pains, there are a lot of difficulties that we do face. But this is all momentary. If you think about it, even the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, I think over the past 3 4 months has been doing a website overhaul as well, to
Hmm.
make the ease of filings better. There is always
Yes.
going to be downtime. We need to understand that, but it is for our good, right?
Yeah. So
Mhm.
good things do take time because
Exactly.
they are so like I got some like a point
Mhm.
that there were six mentions of startups of India in the global list. That was Swiggy, Ola, Oyo, rooms.
Mhm.
So they were like first, and like foreign companies are investing in India,
Yeah.
like the big shots are investing in India. They are setting up their manufacturing and everything. That was like the first earlier that preference was given to China. Now it has been given to India. So yes. So sir, what is the impact of technology, especially AI? Like after the AI has come, there is so many questions, so many like
Yeah.
a job, like people are afraid also, and some are also enjoying it
Yeah.
because it's kind of like creative. And you get, if you use AI, you will get that, like you need to use it because
Yeah.
I am using AI.
Mhm.
So like I really like it.
Yeah.
You just need to write a right prompt for it, and it will do the magic.
Yeah.
So sir, what is the impact of AI and technology in the startups and in economy?
So I think much of my answers today have been very diplomatic, where I'm pointing out a pro and a con. But in reality, I mean, I've always been a fan of technology, also because I'm a very lazy person naturally. If it's going to make my life easier, why would I not use it? And
Yes.
just like you, I do use a lot of AI tools myself, um, that maybe save multiple hours of effort in a day.
Hmm.
Even if you look at something like ChatGPT, which is something which has been phenomenal, but obviously, whenever there has been technology involved, I functioned with just one fundamental, being that it's important to trust, but always to verify, right? You
Yeah.
might see a lot of articles about the credibility of the sources and information that is
Hmm.
getting thrown up by AI in general. But of course, aside of things like ChatGPT, you do see a lot of businesses that are building around artificial intelligence and machine learning. Some of this stuff is path breaking. Some of this stuff can potentially completely remove segments of requirement of employment in itself. You could potentially have a robot tomorrow that's created that can preempt certain actions and can actually act in a particular manner with lesser margin for error than a human. Um,
Hmm.
this is the future. But if you think about it, let's go back to the 70s or the 60s and or maybe even earlier to now, where we didn't have all of the technology that we have today. um, did it throw a lot of people out of jobs? Yes. But did people evolve from then to now? Absolutely. There were different employment opportunities. There were better things to do. In fact, if you think about it today, lawyers back then, right, we used to draft with a pen and paper. We used to write
Hmm.
drafts like that, and then slowly it became typewriting. Slowly it became the computer. Now I'm able to dictate to the computer without needing someone to type. There's just immense possibility, right? But does that mean that our kind stopped being lawyers? No, we still are
No.
lawyers. We just use these tools to
Hmm.
become better at it. Now, of course, there is that contra argument in saying that, what if tomorrow you have a robot that's capable of pulling out precedent and building a strong case for somebody, and potentially giving you written arguments? Sure, I have no problem with something of that nature. Um, there's always human touch, in my honest opinion, which is going to be above what any AI can generate.
Yes.
And given how interpretative our profession is as lawyers, there's always scope to look at things different from how one perspective is. And that, in fact, is the beauty of multiple lawyers looking at the same point. And to me, even if it's AI driven, I just look at it as another person that is perhaps looking at it from a different perspective. But that being said, if you think about it, AI and ML has really taken India to another level altogether. You can see that there's incredible capabilities. There's just absolutely so much that is being achieved today. Think of your healthcare, think of your pharma, think of your automobile sector. So many different zones which are functioning so much better because of businesses that have created AI and ML tools. Right, the efficiency with which we're able to get things done today is just so much easier. um, Imagine for a second, if you're using something like an Amazon or a Flipkart to order something. um, the way we used to do it back in 70s, 80s, 90s, if you think back to the 90s or early 2000s, you'll probably call somebody or you'll have to physically go to a shop and pick something up. But now you even have some of these websites who have tools that give you augmented reality or a virtual reality experience of you wearing glasses or trying out certain clothes. You don't have to get out of the comfort of your house to be able to pick something up like that. Um, which to me is something which was absolutely unimaginable several years back. Uh, but yet here we are, right? We have the ease of doing that. But of course, some people are still there that have that belief that I still need to go to a shop and really check this out to buy it. Uh, that acceptance isn't yet there 100%, but maybe somewhere down the line, it's a possibility that we might have it 100%. It's a huge
Yeah. So
positive. Mhm.
yes. So there was a like story when the AI was at like boom, and it's still in boom, but the stake it took. There was a story of like someone selling shovels when other people were finding gold. So for finding gold, people need shovels. So he started the business of shovels. So that's the part of AI. Like if AI, if you know how to use it, it is the best intern, best assistant that you can have
Of
for your
course.
work.
Yep.
So like your inputs of startups in like merger and acquisitions, what goes in that zone of area? So yeah, your inputs on
Sure. So
that.
this has been quite different over the years, I would say. People who woke up to the startup scene very early, who got introduced to it very early, still came with the mindset like the orthodox business houses, right? Where they were just looking at it as building businesses. They
Hmm.
weren't doing it to say, I'm going to build something and I'm potentially looking at selling it to somebody and moving on. But you do have, I read an interesting statistic. I don't know how reliable it is, but they were saying 4 in 10 startups today are being built to sell, where the intent is that I know that I can potentially be bought by a listed company X Limited.
Hmm.
This is a specific requirement for them. I just need to build it up to this scale, and that's my goal. I will focus. I know where I'm starting. I know I need to get here. How do I build the staircase from here to here? And you see that happening quite a bit. I mean, I think over the past couple of years, we've seen several such acquisitions where the startups have been maybe 2020 incorporated and they've just looked to sell out. There's nothing
Hmm.
wrong with it, but I think the traditional business folk uh, just don't seem to like that approach, right? They tend to focus on the fundamentals of how do I take this to profitability, which is the basics of business, right? Where I think in 2021 that we greatly departed from it. You saw a lot of cash burn. You saw incredibly high customer acquisition costs, but everyone was playing the valuation game instead. Suddenly, you see businesses doing inflated valuation, funding rounds at inflated valuations. But in reality, I think it's kind of come back to the point where everyone's focusing on the basic unit economics, trying to build profitability and capability. And you're seeing a lot of consolidation right now. I think the market is in that zone where you see enough and more businesses getting acquired by the larger players, or sometimes you even see startups that are acquiring other startups and becoming a bigger ship in themselves. I think this is a wonderful thing in terms of what I can see is happening, because it doesn't make sense, right? Where if you have a tap open and there's a lot of water, but you don't have any place for that water to go out, um,
Hmm.
it's then going to suddenly explode and you see water all over the place and you don't know what to do then. But instead, you're starting to see today you're seeing some very streamlined outlets of that water that's being created to kind of ensure that it's now becoming a fully organized sector throughout the country. That for me is something which is very positive. It's changing the way M&A perhaps has been looked at over the years. But of course, your traditional businesses that were family run, that still functions the same way. I'd say startup M&A is a slightly different creature than the regular M&A.
Okay. So like, what is your vision of the startups in future for the Indian economy?
See, I, one of the things that I've greatly liked about what has happened over the past maybe 6, 7 years uh, is that people are slowly realizing that they have the entrepreneurial capability, right?
Hmm.
Um, your ability to depend on yourself. I'm probably going to be touching on a point which is a little more moral than legal. If you look at how the rest of the world, aside of parts of Asia, have looked at various professions, right? There was a there. Let's say if you go over to the West and you're looking at um, someone who's perhaps a cab driver, someone who's perhaps working as a waiter, right? At say a McDonald's or something of that nature. There's a lot of respect that is given to every role. For me, the
Hmm.
huge positive of what is happening because of the scene of how startups are evolving is people are starting to respect one another a lot better. The fundamental at a human level is starting to become so much better because everywhere you look around, you're seeing people coming up with new ideas, new innovation, different kinds of perspectives of doing the same things that exist or creating a whole new category altogether. And you're starting to see slowly that people are giving that mutual respect to one another. And I hope to see that day where every profession in India, every business is given the due respect that it deserves. Um, but what I truly hope to see is that if the dependency on the rest of the world in terms of the imports, if that is something that we're able to kind of bring down greatly, um, the access to quality living, the access to quality resources can be so much cheaper if it's all within India. Think about it. I don't have to import something somewhere from Alaska, given the
Hmm.
geographical location that I'm in. That can be potentially very expensive. But if we have internal capabilities and instead of Alaska, I need to get it from Bangalore or Bombay, imagine I get it in shorter time, I get it for cheaper. It's just that much simpler. And at the same time, it feels good to be able to, to contribute to the growth of your own country's economy. Whereas if you end up, I'm not saying this is wrong in any way, sure, it's personal choice, but it just feels better to ensure that where you belong, if the quality of life keeps improving, it's not a competition, but life becomes better for everybody, right? That balanced growth, I think, is something that I look forward to.
Yes, like what I think that Western countries have great many things, but the part that India has, it's not there in like around the world. It is not there. Like now people have started coming together and respecting each other's ideas and supporting each other. Like if I have some incident in my that took place a year ago.
Mhm.
There were a bunch of college kids. They were standing and they were telling each other ideas, but they some people just brush it off, like because they have that argument that you don't have funding, you don't have like backup, how can you grow what your idea is. But now it is like, you go ahead and whatever that needs, we will back you up, like in what
Yeah,
way you need it.
very
So
true.
that's the thing I like it.
It's very, very true.
Yes, so like it just clicked my mind.
Mhm.
Will the emotional intelligence be ever powered by AI?
That's a very interesting question. I think that is it's possible. I mean, if you think about it, I do not recollect off the top of my head which country this was, but you also do have a couple startups in India where uh, you do see people also inserting chips into their body. Now, I'll tell you where this is going. That is today about monitoring different things, about getting data about the human body. If to that extent, if we're in a position to really track how the human body is functioning, the mind and emotion isn't too far away, right? Because
Hmm.
to you and me, it's words, it's emotions. But from a scientific perspective, you look at it either from the perspective of nerve-based impulses, or you're looking at it from the perspective of what sometimes hormones do to people, and how the brain is wired and how it functions. So I really don't think we're too far from potentially seeing some incredibly brilliant people creating something that can perceive and understand emotion and can potentially, um, you know, let's say that I'm a very angry person and I've been trying to go to anger management sessions and that's not working. I would love to see someone who's would I use it? That's a different question, but um, maybe potentially look at something which can help understand why anger is the reaction to it, and to kind of look at a corrective course, which could maybe, I don't know, if it could happen through AI, that could be incredible. If right now, today, if I'm eating horribly, um, I have different kinds of AI that can help me in different ways. Think of even your smartwatches and what they are capable of doing today, and a lot of apps and a lot of AI based support that's available, which helps you recalibrate the way you approach your general fitness and your daily activities. Um, I don't think emotion is too far away from AI today.
So because it is coming in the movies, I don't know, because I have seen some South Indian movies and some like Hollywood movies. So they have like that concept of chip, and so that's why I thought like if these all things can be controlled by AI, so what about the human intelligence or the emotional intelligence that we have? Because that's what like separates us from the technology or from the machine.
Yep.
So yes. So sir, like in your opinion or in your viewpoint,
Mhm.
what are the steps that and challenges that we will face in coming future?
See, I think um, generally when you're not the first in the market to do something, you have a reference point, right?
Hmm.
Now, when we were not the market leaders in terms of the startup space, in terms of several industries growing, we always had the West market, the East market to look at and say, this is what Uber has achieved, so we will build something similar to that. Or maybe this is what Deliveroo has achieved, or something of that nature, right? Like your Facebooks, your MySpaces, your Teslas. You have a reference point to build to that. Now,
Hmm.
when you suddenly slowly become your industry number one and you're the first to do it, um, as an economy, especially, you've reached a certain height, but you can't stop there, right? Now people are looking at you as a reference point, and that for India is going to be a challenge in my honest opinion, because yes, we are a growing economy, we are a market that's growing really really rapidly, but you can see a lot of regulations, a lot of support that's being given by the government, to some extent has been inspired by what other governments or other economies have done in the past. Now,
Hmm.
one of the things unfortunately for India is, at least to the best of my knowledge, I can't think of anything in the startup zone in the last 5 7 years where India has paved the way for something which doesn't already exist. I'm saying
Hmm.
innovation wise, we may have, but regulation wise and the support that's being given to businesses, I think that is where we're going to potentially have a challenge. Just again, to give you an example, like we spoke about the safe note, we've not yet seen India come up with something of that nature, right? To make
Hmm.
ease of investing, for example, or the kind of subsidies and benefits that are being given. These are things that are not unheard of. These are things which have been there in the global markets, which haven't yet been created afresh for the Indian climate and the Indian market. So this is
Hmm.
going to be a challenge, because now our legislators, our leaders are going to have to think about what next. We've brought them from zero to maybe 80, 90, but if we take them from 90 to 30,000, now how do we give them that springboard to jump off from 90 to 30,000? That is going to be the challenge.
Yes, sir. So I think the monopoly of an industry and a fair competition that needs to be balanced in like have some approach towards it, because in this area we will also face problem, I guess, because
Yep.
there is not a balance in both of these
I
spaces.
completely agree. I mean, I just want to add one thing to this statement. And I'm so glad that you brought this up because this is something which is probably also very underspoken about. If you think about what has been the trend 23 backwards to 21 end, where the funding winter started, you're seeing a lot of startups that are folding into incredibly large businesses who have already been very difficult to compete with. Imagine if you and I
Hmm.
started a business today and we were to compete with the world's richest people today who have incredible corporate houses that they've created. It's impossible, right? We don't have the knowledge, we don't have the expertise yet, we don't have the depth of the funding. None of that exists. But what's starting to slowly happen as a consequence of that is how much can the big leaders keep buying off the smaller ones, which means the
Hmm.
existing monopolies are going to get crazier. It's going to become more established that hey, what is maybe a 3 lakh crore business is now going to become like a 300 crore, I mean, 300,000 crore business, right? Hypothetical numbers. But imagine it becomes that large of an industry controlled by maybe three, four corporate houses. How does someone start up then? Your regulations can
Hmm.
support you, but that monopolistic tendency, they can beat you on pricing. If they
Yes,
deep
so
discount, exactly, exactly,
the power play that happens in the back
absolutely,
stage.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yes, sir. So, sir, any signing off note you want to give to the audience?
Um, I mean, I would honestly just say that we at Peritum are pretty much, you can look at us as a startup as well, right? Because we started again during the pandemic. It's our own thing, right? It's not like working for another law firm or being a part of a corporate legal team or something of that nature. And um, I would honestly say that there are a lot of people who have fantastic ideas, but are very, very scared to kind of start up. It's
Hmm.
very natural to have that fear. I can tell you for a fact that even the larger corporate houses, like we've spoken to a lot of these folks that are promoters of really large corporate groups, right? Even multinationals, and each of them started like you and me. And that fear is something that is consistently going to be there. But how do you address the fear and move past each step? If you think about it, it's just like growing up in life, right? We had our school phase, we'll have our college phase, we'll have our education, every different challenge that each human has. Just treat it like a regular challenge. Fear shouldn't be the basis of not taking it up. But don't trust that advice blindly and saying, uh, just because this guy said I shouldn't be scared to try, I'm going to be really rash about my decision in
Hmm.
dropping a job that is supporting my family today to set something up and take all that risk. It needs to be a calculated, smart decision. As long as you plan, budget, and do this in a structured manner and not in a chaotic mechanism, I think that is something which is what is really, really key. The government's doing everything to educate you on how regulatorily to perform. But in terms of the business sense, the finance sense of things, there's a lot of content that is freely available that it's a good idea to educate yourself before you take that full plunge. Um, that's perhaps what I'd like to put out there.
Yes. So to the your point, the fear
Hmm.
that you have stated, it also comes with like if a fresh graduate is coming out of the college and he has skill or she has skills and everything, but they haven't built the credibility behind them.
Yeah.
Like they don't have a credibility, they don't have a big firm's name in their CV or something. So they have a fear like if they approach them because there is a I don't know, a partiality between NLU and non-NLU students. I don't know why I'm saying this, but it has been there. It is like unsaid. It is like so for students like them or like us, we need to first build a credibility note
Hmm.
so that there is a credibility behind us. We have to build our own goodwill. We have to start from scratch, and then it also gives you like more of moral respect for your own self.
Yeah.
I think it happens.
This is very true. I actually would like to touch on a couple of points. You're very right in what you've said, and this is unfortunately not just in the legal sector.
Hmm.
I kid you not, I've come across a lot of investing networks where people say we will only invest in a particular business if these people are either ex your premier institutions like your IITs, your
Hmm.
ISBs,
Yes.
and IIMs and things like that. If you don't have at least one founder that has studied in one of these places, we can't invest in you. You see some people who think like that. Um, it's I'm nobody to really say whether that's right, that's wrong, but human psychology, or the place that comes from in terms of my understanding, is generally people associate a lot to the brand of where people may
Hmm.
have been educated that they think that it adds to the pedigree. They're not
Yes.
necessarily wrong, but unfortunately, where they end up missing out is on the fact that I didn't study at an IIT, but does that mean that I'm not capable? Absolutely not.
Hmm.
um,
Not.
you know just take Shark Tank itself as an example. You see so many incredible examples of businesses. I don't recollect which business this was, but I do recollect Piyush had invested in this gentleman's business. um, I'll probably get back to you offline sometime if I do happen to figure that out. But that person, he was so capable, incredible mind, incredible innovation. You see that is the beauty of India. That is the beauty of diversity, right? The mind works so differently. The capability is so varied. And one of the best parts of what the startup scene has really helped achieve, while of course you do have that unfortunate side which still insists on the brand, but maybe 60-70% of startups these days look at the brain, look at your
Hmm.
capability. And I'm seeing, especially I'd say until 2021, even the salaries were great, but 22, 23 has been like a drought.
Hmm.
Even for them, access to capital has been difficult, but they still retain talent if they're a good business. And I've seen a lot of businesses hiring, not caring about where people have studied. Um, but I think law firms function a little differently from that. Um,
Yes.
there's nothing right or wrong about this. I guess it's just more about their perspective. Um, but that's precisely why I love the startup space. It's more welcoming than the harsh world out there. It has its own negatives, but I guess that's everything in life.
Yeah. So in startups, you have like you can see and you can do many roles at the same time. So that's also one beauty of startups.
Of course.
So yeah, I like that about it also.
Mhm.
So yes, sir, this is the end of the podcast. Thank you so much
My
for
pleasure.
attending the podcast. Thanks everyone for watching the podcast. I really do hope that you like it and please share it. Leave your feedbacks and comments in the comment section so that I can come up with many more ideas and videos like this. And this is me, Shikha Speak, signing off. Thank you.